Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Supernatural Substation, your last stop before the unknown. I'm your host, Eileen Pastanio, and my co host, Bernadine Richardson, will be joining us shortly with tonight's guest, New Orleans psychic medium, Cari Roy. Cari is a renowned psychic reader and medium with over 40 years of professional experience and has gained a reputation for her empathy as well as her accuracy. She is internationally acclaimed as one of the best psychics by outlets such as the BBC and the Travel Channel, who have featured her in multiple documentaries and TV shows featuring the paranormal and the unexplained. Carrie is a third generation psychic medium whose extrasensory abilities first manifested when she was around 8 years old and were developed with the guidance of her family, including her clairvoyant mother and grandfather. As a young woman, Carrie traveled across the world, experiencing its diversity of peoples, cultures, and spiritual beliefs. She settled in England for a short time and later in Switzerland, her mother's native land, where she realized that her psychic abilities were her calling. Carrie returned to New Orleans in the late 1980s, where she began her career as a psychic and medium, and quickly set out to follow the family tradition of using her gifts to help others. Very soon, Carrie gained a reputation locally as well as internationally as an amazing psychic reader and skilled medium who has helped countless people in their quest to understand their experiences with the spiritual and the unexplained. She is now considered a New Orleans cultural icon. As an expert in her field, Carrie has been featured in many of the most popular paranormal related TV shows and documentaries and is a frequent guest on national and worldwide radio shows and podcasts. Carrie is also an author and has recently published her latest book, Awaken Your Intuition Empowering Women for Success in Life and Business. So please join us tonight in the Supernatural Substation as we welcome Miss Cari Roy. We'll be right back with our guest after this short break. Welcome back to the Supernatural Substation, everyone. This is Eileen Pastanio, and my co host Bernadine Richardson is here with me, and so is our guest, Miss Cari Roy. Hey, Cari.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, y'all.
Thanks for being on. Hey, Dean.
Hey,
All
thanks
right.
for coming, Karen.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
oh, my joy.
Well, it's great to have you, and you're a New Orleans, well known psychic in New Orleans. And I was reading your bio and how it all began, and when you were a little kid and everything. So we really are. I'm really interested in hearing your life story. If you're
Oh, well, thank you. Thank
ready to
you.
tell the life story.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. How much time we all have?
Well, as much as you like. We usually go about
Yeah.
an hour and a half, but there's just so much in there. You've had a whole lifetime. Some people start careers when they're like 20 or something like that, or they come, out of high school or college, but you've been doing this basically your whole life.
I really have. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
since you
really
were
have.
very young. So I just wanted to get into it and just say I was reading your bio, and you said it was around the age of 8 when you kind
Yeah,
of became aware that you had abilities that others didn't have, that something different was going on. You were sensing spirits and picking up on past lives, and you were even telling the future. Can you tell us about that and when you were little and your
I
upbringing?
sure can. Yeah, I sure can. I think I had the perfect, set up to be who I am. I got born into a family where my mother was a medium and psychic too, and my grandfather was an astrologer and a numerologist. So I kind of got born in the right environment for my own stuff to be paid attention to and encouraged. And I think people ask me a lot, like, well, what, I wish that I could do what you do. And it's like, I wish you could too. I was just encouraged. And I think that's what made me able to do this. My mother, when she realized, they didn't force it on me, but I grew up with it. I grew up with helping my mother in seances and all of the ladies from the neighborhood coming over, and we would draw the curtains and my mom would do the seances and stuff. And I would be her helper, just helping
Mhm.
with the ladies and bringing their teas and stuff. But she didn't really bring me into it myself until I was about, yeah, it was like 7, 8 years old. And my first experience that kind of alerted her to what was going on is that we were on Royal Street and it was in the summertime and there was nobody out. It was like it used to be in the summer when there was like nobody here because it was hell hot.
Mhm.
Um, so we were on Royal Street, and all of a sudden I saw like what looked like hundreds of people dressed up like Mardi Gras. I thought the people were dressed up. And it got so overwhelming to me that I fainted. And my mother kind of realized at that point that something was going on with me. And when I started coming to, I didn't see the people anymore. And I kept asking her where the people were. And so she got me to talking about it a little bit once she figured out I was okay. And the reason that I thought it was Mardi Gras is because it was people from all different time periods. So they were wearing all different kinds of clothes that looked to me like costumes.
Mm.
But there, all sorts of people from all sorts of different times. And I asked at that point, I never wanted to have that experience again because it was really overwhelming. And so my mother, being very smart in these ways, she helped give me some tools to kind of learn how to turn it off too, so that it wasn't on all the time. But that's when I started really learning about this stuff. They taught me about the tarot. They taught me about palm. They taught me about past lives. They taught me about astrology. They taught me about all of that stuff. And so I did it. And then my mother passed when I was in my teens. And so I
Oh.
kind of stopped doing that when she passed. And I would say about 10 years went by and I was in my early 20s. And I was actually at that point, I started out being in the music business for a while because my father was a singer. My mother also sang too. So I grew up with singing as being a part of my childhood too. And so I thought initially that that's what I was going to do. And I began as a singer. And there was one time where this woman who was a booking agent and she was booking the band that I had, she and I became friendly. And so people that were my friends, I was always like, what's your sign? If they would have problems, they would come to me to do tarot. They knew that I knew that stuff if they
Mhm.
were my friend.
Mhm.
And so she called me one day and she asked me if I thought that I could do that professionally. And I was in my early 20s and I was like, well, sure, why not? I mean, I was like I was pretty young enough to like not know that I couldn't do something. So I was like, yes, of course I can.
Mhm.
And that was my first professional gig, and that was doing Renaissance. The Renaissance fairs were just starting back then, all across the country, and they wanted somebody to set up like a little gypsy camp where people would do tarot cards and palm readings.
Uh-huh.
And so I got a couple of friends of mine, and I gave them like quick how to do 3 card tarot readings, and I did it too. And I didn't just teach the other people; I did it myself. And that's kind of how it started. And then I started getting more opportunities to do that. And I quickly realized that that was what I needed to do for the rest of my life. And
Mhm.
so I put the singing aside and I just leaned into being a psychic medium. And that's kind of how it started.
That's wild, and it's wild that you would mention Renaissance fairs and gypsies because I have a tribe, and I was the elder, the leader of a whole entire tribe of gypsies at Louisiana Renfest.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we did. I discovered actually just a little bit about it. I just decided that's what I wanted to be, and then I discovered that we actually had an ancestral connection on my maternal grandfather's side to the Roma people through
Yeah.
Sicily. And if you
Yeah.
look up your screen, others can't see it, but there's a little picture of me. It's that little circle. That's me in my gypsy garb.
Oh,
That's
yeah. 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 That's
but they asked
great.
you to form a little tribe, and they asked me to do the same thing. And when I did, just like you did,
all the I said, look, all the tarot and the henna and everything that was sort of like giving the fair problems with the fundamentalists that live up near there. I was like,
Oh,
put it all in the
goodness.
gypsy camp. Well, that's every year there's somebody. There's always somebody. But I said, look, it makes sense to make it a gypsy camp, and we had a Vardo and everything. So that's I didn't expect you to say that
Yeah,
at
yeah,
all.
we had one of those too, and it's interesting because I have some of the Roma on my maternal side too.
Okay, yeah, ours goes
So
through
yeah,
Greece to Albania and Macedonia, and
yeah,
that's through my mother's father. So and
yeah.
his
It
hands.
comes through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was well, I just because you said that, and I am actually bringing the tribe back, so
Oh,
maybe you'll
great.
come and join us.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, we can dress up and you can do whatever. You can teach me how to do tarot readings again because I think I lost my touch. But
Oh, you can
oh,
get it back.
I
Yeah.
just haven't done it in a while. Yeah, it always comes back. But Dean, you heard me laugh because Dean knows all about that. So I'm gonna I'm gonna let you go on, Carrie. I'm sorry to take that sort of a
No,
dog.
no, no. It's a
But
very
if you just
small
see my
world.
face, I was like, oh, a gypsy. Oh, so
Yeah.
well, from there, I know I read that you went abroad and you lived in England for a time and in Switzerland. I read that in your
Yes.
bio, and
Yes, I did.
you studied. You can tell me what it is again, but you basically
Oh,
you kind of like augmented what you already learned and what you already knew with
yes.
educating yourself or education at college. So, can you tell us about that period of your life? Because I guess you must have had encounters there, and I think anyway, reading what you said is like kind of where it kind of crystallized that yeah, you're going to do this. You're
Yeah, yeah. I was
Mhm.
in I went in England, I went on a kind of quest. And I went to all of the magical sites in England,
Mm,
the Stonehenge, Avesbury, Cornwall, Glastonbury. And in Glastonbury is amazing. Glastonbury, they back then in the 80s, they had lots of like B&Bs, not Airbnbs, just bed and breakfasts that were run by old psychics and mediums. And so you could go and stay at a bed and breakfast. It was kind of like what they had at Lilydale and the place at Casadega.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was England, and you could actually stay in the B&Bs that the women had. So that was kind of cool. I got to connect with a lot of old readers that were British in Glastonbury, and that was great.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to Switzerland. That's where my mother's side is from, and that's where the gypsy part of my side was connected in Switzerland. And there's a place that I went to in Switzerland, and it was like walking into a family portrait. It was crazy. They
Wow.
recognized me, I recognized them. It was just amazing, and they were just a bunch of gypsies, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was we had a high ho time. But then I came back to the States and I kind of cut my teeth working in the shops in the quarter. I worked at the bottom of the cup for many years. I kind of bounced around there a bit and then went out on my own right before Katrina.
Mm. Yeah, I used to go down there. I used to go to the square. Now, I'm talking in the 70s, back when I was young. I was a teenager in the 70s. To go down there and get my cards read at the in Jackson Square and all that. And
Yeah, yeah.
in the
I
in
never
the
read in the square, but I think that's because I don't, it always felt like camping to me, and I'm not much of a camper.
yeah, you're not a camping gypsy. Huh?
Yeah,
Then you came back here, so that's when you really started in New Orleans. So
yeah.
I think we're gonna pick up there, and you got to be a really popular and a choice for. I mean, you're named like the top psychic in the U.S. by BBC America, and you've been voted the
I've been very,
yeah
yeah, I've been very
top psychic
fortunate.
comedian. So yeah, so and I guess around that time, and I've heard you mention that paranormal investigation was really in its infancy. You even said that it was kind of like on the fringe. Actually,
It
there,
really was.
yeah,
Yeah.
like we have a haunted city, but investigating it, you say, oh well, there's ghosts, but then the investigating part was like, what? It was new back then. So, can you tell us about your experiences then? when you began to
Sure.
meditate?
Yeah, absolutely. I was working at the bottom of the cup. There was this guy that came in. He was from New Orleans, but he had moved to California. He was from LA, and he started up paranormal investigations of all of these places in the quarter, all the hotels, all the restaurants, some private homes, but mostly they were public places. I was in the group that went into it was the chart house back at that time before it was Muriel's.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in with them there, and that's where we found the spirit that's there, Père Antoine. And then where else? Oh, what's Tableau now? It was Le Petit Theater of the Vieux. That
Mm-hmm.
was very haunted. Misty and I got to go back in there about a year or so ago, and the spirits actually remembered me from back when I was there like 30 years ago. And so
Wow.
that was wild.
Wow. That is something. Well, I guess they got long memories. They, you
Yeah,
know.
well, they to them it might be that they feel like we were just there yesterday. You never know. You know, their perception of time, I think, is very different from ours.
Yeah. Dean, I know Bernadine does the paranormal investigations. I'm just sort of her co-pilot a little bit. So I know you have some questions, Dean. I wanted to get you in here on the investigative part.
Yeah, where are some of the places you guys got to investigate? Was
Well,
that before
again,
Katrina?
that was way before Katrina. Yeah, that was the very early 90s. But we got to investigate again what was before it was Muriel's, it was called the Chart House. And it was still a
Mhm.
restaurant, but it was before it became Muriel's. But when we went in there, it's still the spirits that are there at Muriel's, they haven't changed. We did that. We did the Monteleone, we did Brennan's, we did the Court of Two Sisters, we did the Dauphine Orleans, the Bourbon Orleans. Let's see, where else? Again, Le Petit Theater of the Vieux. We did, it used to be called O'Flaherty's. It's closed down. It was an Irish pub, and that was really haunted.
Yeah.
So we did most of the major hotels, and we did Le Pavillon. They ended up making a documentary about it called New Orleans Rich and Haunted, was one of the things that they did on some of the investigations that we did. That was a little later. The people had left after they did all of those investigations. They had gone back to California. And so, yeah, it was an interesting time. There were only 3 ghost tours in New Orleans, if you can imagine, only 3, because there's probably like 500 now.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot. I'm exaggerating, but it's a lot.
It might as well
It
be.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, it really is. There's a bunch of them, but there were only 3 at the time. Haunted History, Sydney Smith's, there was a guy named Richard. He's long gone. I haven't seen him in decades, so he left. And the people that I was working with, they were called ISPR, the International Society of Paranormal Research.
Is that Larry Montz in that group?
Was Larry
It
Montz,
was.
yeah, Larry Montz. Yeah, Larry. Yeah, he was quite a character. I won't say much about him because
No,
my
I know,
mama. Oh,
but I put together ISPR
yeah,
and or another. Yeah. Okay, and he was one of the ones doing the tours down
he
there.
was. Yeah, yeah, and he was actually. There's a lot of stuff that gets said about Larry, and I might agree with a lot of it, but he really was cutting edge with that stuff, and he was doing the paranormal investigations before anyone was really doing them. I think he sued the ghost hunters at one point, and I think he won a little bit of something out of that because he had pitched a show years before the ghost hunters went on about this stuff after we had done the investigations in the early 90s. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, but yeah, he was a mixed guy.
Well, yeah, and I know that at one he had something to do with Golden Leaves bookstore. Do you remember Golden Leaves? It
I
was.
do remember, yeah, and Lawrence was the
Yeah.
guy that I remember, blonde hair, and his wife Marcia.
Yeah, they used to be on Jefferson Highway.
Yes,
Then
yeah,
they into Metairie. They well further closer into Metairie by Severn.
yeah,
Yeah. So and my mother used to drag me there when I was younger, when I was like 10, 11 years old. She was into all of that. So I'd go there and the lectures, and I admire you so much for doing astrology, but I was so bad in math, I couldn't do it.
Oh,
I could read an ephemeral,
yeah,
but I couldn't figure anything out. I was like, no,
yeah. It's all geometry, really.
yeah.
Quincunx,
I'm
all that.
very bad. I'm great at liberal arts, but math, I just had this mental block, so I could never be taught, astrology. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's like the good old days. You're bringing all that up, and Ghost Hunters was accused of, taking the idea from other people too. So
yeah.
there was an Australian,
Oh, yeah.
you know, yeah. You got to watch it. I mean, because they had a pretty predatory production company that were
Yes.
stealing stuff just left and right, just looking for material. But I'm
Yeah.
talking about this. I wanted to ask you: do you have spirit guides?
At this point, I haven't worked with guides in a long time. I've got ancestors that I'm connected to, but I don't work with my guides the way that I used to when I was younger.
Mm,
It's just that's not where I'm getting the information from. I don't think. I think I'm just tapping into people's energies.
mm-hmm,
But I did do a lot of work with my spirit guides when I was younger. I sure did.
mm-hmm. And it was probably mostly your family guiding you, like,
Well, oh no, I had other, oh, you mean teaching me how to work with my guides
yeah,
or the people who passed in my family?
mm-hmm,
Because
yeah,
yeah, some of my guides are people who passed from my family. Some other guides were guides that I had no, I mean, they wild guides. Like I had one guide that was this, he looked like Mr. Clean. He was this big giant um, bald-headed guy who was one of my guides for a long time when I was young, very protective of me, and I needed that protection because I was a little wild when I was younger.
mm-hmm.
So,
Mhm.
And he kept it away. He kept everybody away from you, I guess, or
yeah,
kept it
he
clean,
did.
Mister.
Yeah, he sure did. Mr. Clean.
He
Yeah,
sounds like a bodyguard.
yeah, he did.
That's
He felt like,
Yeah, standing there with his arms folded and everything. And Dean, I'm going to pitch it back to you if you have some questions.
Yes, Carrie, I had read in your bio that your mother also had clairvoyant abilities.
yeah, she did. Yeah,
And
I've
how
got a
did
great story.
her
Pardon?
clairvoyant abilities
Wait,
show? I mean, how did they come to her?
she's got a.
Oh, well,
Mhm,
she did tarot primarily, was the way that she connected.
mhm.
And she
Okay.
taught me the tarot, but she was also a really strong medium. And I actually saw my mother levitate once. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen in
Oh,
my life.
wow.
I've never seen anything like that, but she levitated once. She was pretty powerful.
I
Well,
think I'd run. Yeah.
do you have any stories about her? You said you had a great story, but I'm sure there's
Oh, well,
more than.
back many years ago, I smoked cigarettes
Mm,
and that was how I ended up getting permission to smoke cigarettes from her. Is that I asked her, I said, "Can you do a reading for me?" And she was like, she didn't want me to know, she didn't want me to tell her what I was asking her about. And then halfway through the reading, she was like, "Okay, you might as well just start smoking, girl." I quit. Man, I've been quit now about 18 years, but back then I smoked cigarettes, and so she knew that I was asking her that question without me having to ask her.
oh
And
wow!
those were just funny things. Yeah.
Like most moms would just smell it or something, and then they would. It's like she knew.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I was really careful to try to hide it from them. I think I was pretty good at being covert about it, but she just knew that was the question.
hmm.
She predicted my first husband. She predicted when I was in my early teens, predicted that I would marry a really tall, blonde haired, blue eyed man. And my first husband was almost 7 foot tall.
Oh wow, wow.
And he was blonde haired, blue eyed.
Mm.
So many of her predictions came to pass even after she passed.
Yeah, I'm sorry you lost her so young. But I'm sure she's been around you ever since.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And is
Yeah.
that
She and I have,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say she and I still have a very close relationship.
That's great. I was going to say that too. Is that the way with most of our ancestors? Like, people, people ask psychics like you, they say, well, are they around us all the time? Like even when we're in the bathroom and stuff. And I don't think it's that way, is it? Like they're,
Not that way. It really isn't that way, but they keep an eye on us pretty much all the time. And what I feel is that when anything's going to happen with us, when we really need them, it's like they can hone in on us.
hmm hmm it's
And
just like,
so,
at when people in my family have passed, a lot of times they see someone coming for them, or
yes,
they'll say they saw. For instance, I had an uncle that passed, and my aunt came for him at the end, but he was in and out of consciousness. But he said plain as day, "I'm not ready, Louise," and so Aunt Louise must have left, and then came
yeah.
back another day later. But he was not lucid really with us, but he was talking to somebody there. So, I mean, I'm sure that happens. And it's a comfort to know.
Yes, it truly is. When my mother passed, my father was traveling all the time, and so my her sister, my aunt, um, took me in and actually adopted me,
Mm.
and raised me for the rest of my teens and stuff. And I was with her when she passed, and I could feel my mother and my uncle coming for her. I felt them walk right into the room, like boom, boom, and they waited. And that's when I knew that she wasn't going to make it. I didn't want to know that she wasn't going to make it, but as soon as they were there, I was like, oh, here we go.
Hmm. Yeah, you knew that's what it was going to be. Well,
Yeah.
I was watching you talking with Misty on her show. You were talking about a doll, not a doll, but a robot, a toy that came.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh yeah.
and
That
you
was
said,
wild.
yeah, I actually watched that little segment twice because you said you don't scare easy, but
Oh, it freaked me out. And this thing was on my desk,
yeah,
and it started charging at me. It started charging at me, and it was like this little robot thing, like a toy. And the woman had showed me that it was off. There were no batteries in it, nothing. She put it on my desk. That thing charged right at me.
mm,
And then it started moving up and back to respond yes or no. It was crazy. It was really wild. And then it took itself and it threw itself off my desk and right into her lap. It
oh wow.
definitely was, yeah, it was wild.
Well, can you tell
It
us
was
about?
the most, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, finish telling
Oh
me about.
no, I was just going to say it was the most. It was the really, as far as things moving, that was the strongest that I've ever seen. I mean, I've had things fall down on me and other things happen over the years with spirit being able to move things, but this was going on for quite a while. It wasn't a little thing. It went on for a while, and there was no way. There was no strings. There was no remote. That thing was just operating all on its
Wow.
even. It was crazy.
And it turned out to be her relative that was trying to communicate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
So
Yeah,
you took over the
it
toy,
sure did.
scared you. But can you tell us about some other incidents where you kind of felt a little uneasy or maybe something else scared you?
Well, I had a instance once many years ago when I was still reading out of my house, and I had a appointment scheduled for somebody to come in, and the knock came on the door. I opened up the door, and there was an entire gang standing outside in front of my house, like rough gang, like a gang of guys. And
Really?
I yeah, and I told the one guy, I was like, you can come in and the rest of them have to go. And so he turned around and told them to leave. They did. And he came in and I gave him a reading, and he wanted to know who killed his friend so he could go kill him.
Oh wow.
And that was like I had to talk him out of that. I had to really like get him to not go and do something that foolish, and then cause the loss of two more lives because he would have gone to jail for it. But that was a little scary. And then there was somebody who came to see me that I really felt had killed people before. And I
Mm.
think he was just coming to see me to see if I could tell that he had killed people, because I think he felt like if I could tell that he killed people, other might be able to tell. And so I didn't tell him I knew he killed people. I got him out of that office as quickly as I possibly could.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you definitely don't want to say, "Oh, yeah, and this one and that one and that." No, no, not
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Oh, wow.
no, yeah,
The
yeah, that was wild. Yeah, I didn't want to know the details. I really didn't. I just knew he had done things that were not good things to have done, and he was like a drifter kind of guy. It was
mm,
it was challenging.
geez, that's frightening. That's scary. Dean, come on.
Yeah, it's not the dead people that scare me, it's the live ones.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when you said gang at first, I thought, "Wait, is it a gang of spirits?" But then then you explained,
Yeah.
like, no, on the other one. So, Dean,
Yes, Carrie, whenever you were growing up in with all this stuff, did your family that had gifts already, did they explain to you about the dark side of the
Well,
supernatural?
yeah, they taught me about things that, to protect myself and how to kind of shield those things and what to do if I ever did encounter one. My mother was good. She told me that this is the world of form and that we live in the world of form and they don't. And so that gave me a lot of comfort in that she said that the only way they could really, really come and try to hurt us is if we opened it up. And so they taught me to protect myself.
mm,
That's good. We need that for sure.
yeah,
And you say that you have empathic abilities. So do
Yeah,
you
I'm
feel
I'm an
others'
empath,
pain?
but I'm sorry.
Do you feel others' pain?
I do, but another thing that my mother taught me, and this is helpful for everybody, is that you can feel somebody's pain, but you can't hold on to somebody's pain because it's not yours to hold on to. You'll have your own pain for the things that you went through. And that really helped me as an empath to understand that I can feel it, but I can't keep it, and that's something that I've learned to do. It's just a little technique that I've used for many years. It's like I used to visualize people's feelings coming in through my kind of like my heart chakra and my solar plexus, but then I would feel them pass through me and come out.
Good. Yeah.
mm, that's something else. I don't know if I could deal with that. Actually, everybody says they want to be psychic, and I don't know. I don't think so. But the numerology and everything. Now, I would like to be able to do that. But
Oh, numerology is great. I mean, numerology, even though you don't like math, numerology is basically just addition. You
I do
just
that
figure out.
kinda automatically. I learned a little bit about it, like adding up the numbers of house address
Yeah,
to see what if it's a quote unquote good number or a bad number or
remember.
whatever that
Yeah.
is. Yeah, so I know a little bit about it. Those kind of things do interest me. In addition, to writing ghost stories and stuff like that. So I know that you've, in addition to the paranormal investigations that you've been on several television shows, and you've also been into the homes of popular, celebrities. And one of the local
Yeah.
celebrities that you mentioned for New Orleans is Anne Rice. And
Yes.
did you give her readings or did you just do
I
her?
didn't read Anne Rice. It was just paranormal investigations of her properties. Every property except her own personal home where her husband lived because he was alive at that time. And
Hmm.
there was something interesting about Stan. He didn't believe in the paranormal at all. And I always thought that was an interesting dynamic of their marriage because she was like the queen of the paranormal and he didn't believe in it at all. He loved her, he supported her writing, but he wasn't a believer. And so he didn't want any of that going on in their own home. But I
Hmm.
did St. Elizabeth's, the old orphanage. I
Yeah,
did that, but that was creepy. What the creepiest thing about it was is that she had a doll room in there, and it
yeah.
was big. It was a big room, and that room creeped me out because of all the dolls. That was like, ooh, I don't know.
So just because they were dolls or because there were spirits attached to those dolls?
They were creepy looking dolls.
Mhm.
They were just like when you walk in, it didn't look like a doll store. It looked like they were creepy dolls.
And they were all there. I remember around that time. when she opened it back up and everything. And I read an article that said that she herself didn't like to be there after dark, when they were
Yeah.
closing up and stuff like that. She didn't like to be with the dolls, and in fact, she took the dolls from all of her homes and put them all there because of
Yeah.
that, because they made her uncomfortable. So I imagine they had to be spirits attached to it. Um,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, and that's really interesting about her husband because, yeah, she is the queen, the queen of the supernatural, and she used to say that the spirit Lestat would come to her as a spirit. He would come
Yeah.
and guide her writing. So, but for Stan to just be like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just,
He loved her writing. I mean, he was very
oh
supportive
yeah,
of that. He just didn't believe any of it. He didn't
that
have any kind
that
of
is a
interest
weird
in doing anything.
combination, definitely.
It really was. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, you have a book that you released in March of this year, and it's called "Awaken Your Intuition." And I wanted you to tell us about that. You released it in March because of it was Women's History Month, I think is
Yeah.
what. So, can you tell us a little about what's in the book and what it can do for anybody who reads it?
It's targeting women specifically. I'll write a more general book for everybody, but I really felt that women, we need to listen to ourselves and we need to trust ourselves. And so the book is really geared towards women. The subtitle is Empowering Women for Success in Life and Business.
Yeah.
And I think that we as women have this wonderful ability within us all. Like, we've got strong intuition. Every woman has it. Sometimes it'll only come out when it say you're dealing with your kids or when you're dealing with your loved ones, when you just have feelings like that. But every single woman has intuition. And the book really just gives women the permission to listen to themselves. It gives them exercises and tools that they can use to strengthen that, to discover it, and to, figure out how they want to use that in their lives.
Mm-hmm. And it tells you, I guess, how to go through the different phases of, because some women never marry. Some women never marry. Some women marry and never have kids. But
Yeah.
mostly, generally, women go through. They grow up and then they marry and eventually have kids. So there's advice in there for every. I mean, usually, like your intuition about your children or about things that that might happen to your children is really strong. But it's a thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it goes through all your life though. So is there some instructions in there and ways to strengthen that bond?
Oh, definitely. It's, how to use that in all relationships, because we can tune into everybody in our lives. I think intuition benefits all of our relationships. It makes us more sensitive to the feelings of others. It makes us pay attention more to the feelings of others, not just our own feelings, but we can sense how other people are feeling. And so it really strengthens all sorts of bonds.
Hmm. Yeah, because there are some traditional roles. A lot of people reject them, but it is kind of a hardwire thing. If you agree, just the nurture, the ability
Yeah.
to guide and nurture and respond. It sounds weird, I guess, but in a womanly way, in the way a mother or woman responds to different people's needs.
Absolutely.
The people in their lives, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're the caretakers, that's what we
Yeah,
do.
that's what I was going to say. We're the caretakers until they take care of us. So,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. Yeah.
and it comes with the package of being female. And men, I
It
guess,
really.
they have their own. Men have their own intuition and their own hard wiring, but and they're different. But they obviously they can work off of each other in a good marriage, especially when it comes to children. So, Dean, do you have anything else?
Yes, I wanted to know if you remember any of your past lives or you just sense other people's past lives.
Oh, I remember some of mine. It's a funny thing. Well, not necessarily funny, but I was beheaded in numerous lives.
What?
And it's funny.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
have headaches in this life, and I never get toothaches. Like, if I get a headache, it's got to be something terrible. If I get a toothache, I'm like, it's got to be terrible. I don't generally have like those kind of feelings from the neck up, which is interesting because I was one of the first past lives that I remembered. I was a woman. Speaking of women and children, I was a woman in it. It was sometime in the Middle Ages, and I was living in the woods. I had a like a place in the woods, and I had children. And my husband wasn't there. He might have been fighting a war or whatever. He wasn't there. It was just me out picking up kindling, I guess, to bring home. And my kids were playing off to the side. And all of a sudden, this man on horseback comes riding towards us. And as soon as he got towards me, he cut my head off.
How did you
Wow.
how did you see this? Vision wise, dream wise?
It
Did you
wasn't in a dream. It was in a vision. And it was really, it frightened me some, you know.
Oh,
But
I guess
it
so.
was, I felt sad. What it did is it made me feel sad for the children. I didn't even think about like my not being alive anymore. I just, my feeling was what happened to my kids? What happened to my kids? You know, that was what really frightened me, was that I had, in that lifetime, I had left a couple kids behind.
Yeah, alone and without both parents. But this has
Yeah.
happened in multiple lifetimes?
Yeah, I was put to death by being I don't know if it was a guillotine or if it was somebody, but I met somebody else, and he and I had been put to death together, and it was a bond that we looked at each other's eyes when we were being put to death,
Mm.
and it we ended up finding each other in another lifetime just to make sure that each other was okay.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I'm always fascinated by that. I have, it's just impressions, I, and aversions to different things that I experienced, that I know have a past life connection. And, when I was little, very little, a toddler, I used to dress up as a nun. I used to want to be a nun as a toddler, and was praying in
Wow.
like Latin. And my mama, who was a devout Catholic, and my mother both told me I used to walk around and I used to want to carry holy cards and
Oh,
rosary.
wow.
Yeah, and so and would this is I would dress up. My grandmother's little dog was a little fox terrier, sort of like Mary, like with blue. I would put on it, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, and
Yeah.
around at 6 years old, when you begin to go to school, and so you're interacting more, it faded. I stopped doing it, but the memory of it never faded. And then
Wow.
later, there was it was triggered by the word Ajax, basically, and Ajax on a water cistern in South Dakota. And I was a nun, and I was killed. I was knifed to death, running away. I was running down a railroad track. And I was born with the aversion to railroad tracks,
Wow.
areas. I could see it on a water system. I was like, there's a place called Ajax. I looked it up, and it's in South Dakota, and it's on a railway hub. And I didn't understand it until I began to read about the schools, the Catholic schools that they went out into the Indians, into the reservations, and they went out to, educate the Indians and all. And I think that kind of was the connection to that area. So, but nothing,
Yeah. Wow.
I wasn't there feeling it, but it all came to me every now and then. I'm not psychic at all. I don't claim to be. I can do cards, and I'm just intuitive. It just sort of kicks in like an intuition. And so
I think that's psychic. I think you could say you're psychic.
well, yeah, it's a little bit not like you at all. But so if I get into the groove of reading cards, I do a pretty good job. So
Uh,
that kind of intuition about stuff, and you think you dream that you were there. You think you dreamed this, but then you realize what it is. And the most strange thing about that is, courier print on. You remember old typewriters? They had the courier
yeah.
Arial, and that was it. Now you have so many, but the
Yeah.
courier
Fine.
actual courier font made me feel it just turns me off. There was something, I have a complete aversion to that. I can't type in it. I don't like reading it. And that was how it was written on the water system in big old
Wow.
Ajax is what it said. And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, I don't like the West very much. and I
I
don't
would
like
think
roads. And we used to go in the summertime when they had camps down on Haynes Boulevard in New Orleans, and we used to have a
not.
camp in the summer, and you'd have to go up the levee and then go down, and you'd have to cross those railroad tracks that ran along the lake.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I would stand there and cry. I would stand there holding my Winnie the Pooh, crying. And my mama would come and get, what's the matter with you? And they'd pick me up and then take me over the tracks. I could not
Yeah.
cross there was no train coming for miles. Nothing was around. So it's just weird like that. And but I imagine for you, it's a bit more vivid than anything like that. So,
Well, I think that's a really powerful experience, what you're sharing. I really do. I think that's very, and part
yeah.
of what I say in my book is, don't ever minimize your experiences,
Mhm.
honor them. And I think you're psychic. I think that the things that you're describing to me are things that psychics do. That's what we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Well, I've had a couple of instances. I've only had one instance, and it was with a paranormal investigation. And it was when I don't know. I had I was participating in a convention. Dean, I think you were with me, or maybe you were you were with me at this one. But anyway, long story short, something real unexpected, like narrowly missing a car wreck right before we went to where I had to be, and they were going to have break up into groups and do investigations of this jail. I think it was in Pensacola, and
Or
something
yeah.
had opened me up wide. Like I don't, I was so it was my daughter ahead of me, and she almost got hit by a car, and
Oh,
she didn't see that car coming. And that car, I don't know how it did not hit her. And I had just before that, a good friend of mine had died, and I think it was kind of him because he always
yeah,
for us. And it was like, I don't know. You know how you look at it and you're just like, I don't know how that didn't happen because she should have
yeah.
been phoned with that car. So I was in this emotional state, and there was a psychic there. Um, and when I walked in, she's like, "Oh my," she was getting all these impressions of stuff from me, and like I was just like, oh, I was just so just, I mean, my heart was in my mouth. So
Oh, yeah.
then I went and participated in. We were sitting in a room doing EVPs, and it was the story about the room was like somebody had been killed for something they didn't do, or I'm sorry, put to death for hung for something they didn't do. And all of a sudden, this is the only time this has happened to me. I started crying. I really, it was total empathy with this person, and they were getting EVP responses, and it was total empathy. I have never had that happen to me. I'm just too much of a, I guess I'm too much of a uptight to have done that, but because I had been, I guess, freaked out right before I went in there, and I started crying, and I felt everything this guy felt, that he was going to be hung for something he didn't do, and I was all upset about it, and I had to leave. So
Yeah,
those are the only time. But you're right, intuition, like just in general things, like we shouldn't go there or stuff like that. I have that all the time.
yeah,
So it's good to develop.
yeah.
That was a great question, Dean. You got any more?
Yeah, I remember a couple of my own past lives. That's why I had asked that question. And yeah, I've had pretty many psychic experiences myself. So whenever you do readings for people, you say you like to do the psychic readings versus the tarot cards or divination. Do
Well, what
you?
ended up happening is that I got to the point with using tarot, and I use tarot for like I cut my teeth on tarot. I mean, that's pretty much was the tool that I used when I first started, and probably for a good 20 years. And then before I went out on my own, I just realized that I didn't need the cards anymore. I could connect with people without having to turn the cards over. That I was reading people and I wasn't looking at the cards anymore, and that's when I decided that I didn't need to use them anymore. I still have great respect for tarot card readers, and I still think that the tarot cards are a wonderful tool for people to use to build that connection with themselves. But it just got to the point for me that it just became a buffer, and I just thought, well, I'll just connect to the people straight ahead.
Mm.
Well, I have a cousin that does psychic readings also, and a lot of the psychics that I watch on TV and read about, they say that whenever you're looking at a person that you're fixing to read, that they're like, if it's a family member, if they stand on one side, it's the mother's side. If they stand on the other side, like behind the person, if you would be looking at them,
Sure.
is it like that for you?
Well, everybody has their different ways of picking stuff up. I don't necessarily have the on one side the mother, the other side the father side, but we
Mhm.
all have things that stand out to us in the way that we do things.
Do you see
And
auras?
I do see auras. Yeah, I can see auras. Everybody's got them. We're all walking around with them, and auras can change depending on what's going on in our life.
Right.
Well, there's
But
so
it's good to
much
see
chaos.
auras because it helps. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying there's so much chaos now and what's going on in everyone's life. I guess it's hard for you to avoid seeing that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. There's a lot of energy now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dean.
Oh, I was done with that question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to walk all over you there. Yeah. I was Dean and I. We when we're together and we like do events, or we do talks or whatever, we try to focus on the dangers of the supernatural and uh, ignorant psychic experimentation or ignorant
Oh yeah.
experimentation. Because my mother got to the wayside with following, but you remember back in the 70s it started all that first blush of ESP, new age, and all that, and so she
Yeah.
was yoga and all that kind of stuff. She was into that, and it caused a lifetime of hauntings for me. And the house that we lived in, typical suburban house, was haunted as hell because
Yeah.
she was involved in all this stuff, but then she stopped it because she got scared and she tried to do a go back, and that was even worse because they didn't like that, the
Yeah.
basic entities and spirits and all that. So we try to warn people. And do you find, I don't know if you agree with this, that with the popularization of paranormal on TV and in popular culture and all, that
Oh
there's a
yeah.
lot of people just not, there's so many people telling people how to do things, that there's so many people out there that are doing basically harm to themselves, opening
Yeah.
themselves up. And I don't know how you feel about the Ouija board. Maybe you'd like to let us know about that. But do you agree with that? Do you see that, and do you help people?
Well,
Like,
yeah, I see a lot of people now, especially with, you've got American Horror Story, you've got these things that are people need to be educated before they start playing around with that stuff because they can open doors that they don't know how to close.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's something that I see a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of that out there now. And the world is getting pretty crazy. And part of me wonders if some of that has to do with everybody messing around with things that they really shouldn't be treating very cavalierly the way they are.
Well, it's so popular, and everybody's monkey see, monkey do. And so all this, we ghost hunters, um, Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans and them. And
Yeah,
Dean and I will look at it and laugh and kind of chuckle on the side at how foolish they look. But they're doing a world of damage to people that are mimicking them and coming along and, especially provoking spirits.
oh gosh, yeah, yeah, that's the thing that I the provoking of spirits, that's a dangerous game.
Yeah. And then it takes somebody like you come in and find out why they're mad or something, and then the haunting takes over at the paranormal investigator's house, and so many people just they'll go in graveyards, cemeteries, which are probably some of the worst places to just go and do that, because the dead, they're not there. It's what's in there
Yeah,
that you're talking to, unless
yeah,
you just buried Uncle Joe and you're there the next day trying to talk to him. He might be there. From
yeah,
what I understand, it takes a while. They go from place to place. They might go to their grave and then they'll go to their home. And before
Yeah,
they begin to understand, they're not alone. They have loved ones with them, but then they begin to understand
yeah,
the past. But after about a year, 6 months or whatever, you go over there to Joe whatever's grave, and it's not going to
yeah,
be Joe. And that's
yeah,
the first place that paranormal investigators, when they form teams and everything, nothing on you, Dean, because I know you know what you're doing, but they go in a graveyard, the
yeah,
first, because it's open, it's free. Let's go try all of our new gizmos and stuff like that. And then it becomes some major problem for somebody who's ever, the most vulnerable in the group. So, I mean, when you've done investigations, have you encountered that in some of the people that you've worked with, and have you kind of like tamped it down and basically, or just tried to steer them another way?
yeah, yeah. I had the woman that I worked with on an investigation once years ago, another psychic medium, and she just wanted to again provoke. She wanted to bring the bad energy, and it was something that was getting filmed. And
Mm,
so I think maybe the producer kind of wanted it to be extra scary too. And all of a sudden the thing went off the rails. I mean, it just got bad. We were in a place in, I think it was Abita Springs, and what there was already some bad energy there from what felt like an Indian massacre years ago,
mm,
um, where a family had been killed for just being where they shouldn't have been.
mm-hmm,
They didn't know they shouldn't have been there, but the Indians knew they shouldn't have been there.
mm,
And so there was a lot of that energy. But instead of wanting to connect with the family that died, this woman was trying to connect with the spirits that killed the people. And I was like, oh, here we go.
oh Lord.
Yeah, here we go. And, it was all about the melodrama and all about the screaming and all of that. And, the histrionics about it. And I know that's what sells on TV, but you really shouldn't do that stuff.
No, no, and that's what we try to explain to people. It's like if you're sitting in your living room, watching TV, and somebody walks into your house and starts yelling at you. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah,
Some of
yeah,
these spirits
it
are
really
attached
is.
there, right? They're there. They're either attached because they want to be, or they may be stuck there, or
Maybe stuck there. Yep.
you walk into this place and all right, this is how it's going to be, and you're gonna, and I mean, it's like when it's somebody like popular on TV, or some of these teams that you see on TV, it's like, okay, or on YouTube, because everybody likes to do YouTube now. It's like, okay, well, so
Yeah,
then, few weeks later, I'm investigating the shadow entity at my house. And yeah,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you've
I'm
oh,
glad y'all are doing that to educate them.
well, we try. Yeah, I wrote a book about my experiences, and Bernadine has years and years of experiences with people whose hauntings, right, Dean, were the result of fooling around, being not knowing what you're doing, especially with the Ouija board. You know,
Yeah,
right? What do you think about
yeah.
the board? What's your opinion about?
Well, I don't think that the Ouija board of itself is necessarily dangerous, but I think that the availability of it and the
Mhm,
fact that kids can use it without ever learning to protect themselves prior to that is dangerous. It really
mhm,
is. There was a time, oh gosh, long time, Boshin is a kind of development area, and all the houses had just been built. I mean, there shouldn't have been anything going on there.
mhm.
And we were getting calls because a portal had been opened in Boshin by these kids
Oh,
that were messing
uh,
around,
mhm,
with the Ouija board. And we had to go in there and clean it up. And they're lucky we could clean it up because, the reason that I don't mess around with that stuff, and I will walk away from stuff really because it's just not it's not a positive thing to do. And there are some things that are better off left on the other side.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. I laughed because I live like between Abita Springs and Beauchamp.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm on the North Shore, and when you said there's
Yeah.
a portal open in Beauchamp, it's like I was like, yeah, there's a portal. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like
No, no.
they used to have they're uppity for everybody who's listening who's not from here. They started out as the uppity crowd on the North Shore, the first
Yes.
people over here, and they used to have when you drove out of their gate, the main gate. It was so funny. They had a Piggly Wiggly and a little convenience store thing, and they had a dry cleaner and a daiquiri shop. And
Yeah.
that was the extent of it. I'm sure because
Yeah.
you've been over here for a while, and I know you remember it. But it
Yeah.
was like so. Yeah, all they have to do these the hoity-toity has to do is drive straight out, get all of their stuff, go back in Bosch, and
Go back.
it's like
Yeah.
and we. It's just like we're on the other side of the tracks from them, and so we always
Yeah. Absolutely.
but that's weird. That's wild. So, and not far from there, there's another place that I know of that I know is definitely haunted, and it's not far from there. And it's definitely haunted with a bad. Uh, well, there's a spirit of a dead girl, and then there's a demonic entity there, and it's not far from there. And that's interesting because where it is would have been in the swamps like years ago,
Yeah.
years and years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so anything could have happened there, right? I mean, it could have been a
Oh
murder
yeah.
or someone
Oh
died.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting that it's not far. So were you able to, I mean, you're able to help them, I guess they never did that again, fooling with the weed.
No, they didn't do that again. No, they sure didn't do that again. Not
Well,
that, yeah, yeah,
well, yeah.
because it was kids, who had no business doing that to start with.
I just I don't know why they still sell it as a toy, but you've got it's so divided with people who believe that it's nothing. Like I had one when I was 6 and it didn't do anything. We tried to play with it, my cousin and I, and yeah, I got bored and drew all over the planchette. I was little, 6, 7 years old. My mama brought this in the
Yeah.
house, but I mean I was watching Dark Shadows and I already into
Oh, sure.
and all this. So it was no, and my mother was into the supernatural. She was in, and we moved from where we live. We lived downtown, or well, near Broad Street, in the middle of North.
Yeah.
And we moved out to the east. And the long story short, my mother threw the Ouija board away. She in its box in the trash on the curb. And we went 7, 8 miles away to our new house, and it was there when we got there. It was
Ooh.
it was not in the box. It was the board and the planchette. And I knew it was the planchette because it had all my drawings all over it. And I had poked the
Wow.
little plastic thing out. I had poked that. I mean, it was boring. It was a boring game. There it was. And my
Yeah.
mother, and people laugh at me when I tell this story. They laugh. Dave Schrader made fun of me when I told
Oh
this.
gosh.
Yeah, he did. And I think he's since had his own experience with other stuff. But I'm like, this really happened because my mama was afraid and my mama was all upset. And I was still young, but I thought I was going to get in trouble. And it wasn't that. It was that she was so upset. And she knew that the house we had lived in, I didn't know this. That well, I had experiences, but I didn't really put it together. We moved from a haunted house to a brand new house we built, and the Ouija board was there. And then that
Oh,
house
yeah.
became, a nightmare basically for
Yeah.
decades. And she died young. Well, she didn't die young. She died when I was around 27 years old, and
Oh, I'm
50,
sorry.
and that's still young for her. And part of
Yeah.
it is this to blame is her experimenting and letting all these things that came into her life, and she just couldn't get out from under it. I think it contributed. She had health issues, but I think it contributed greatly.
Big to that. Yeah.
So, well, Dean, do you have anything else for Carrie?
Yeah, I have one more question. um, I know you're in New Orleans and the whole city is basically haunted. Whenever you
Yeah.
go into restaurants and visiting or wherever you go in the city, have you ever like seen a spirit and it follow you home?
The only time that something followed me home, and this really is I did a investigation on a personal home on Camp Street, and we were trying to clear, it was me and Misty, and we were trying to clear the place because it was just bothering, it was disruptive to the people that were living there. And this male entity, we found a male, and he was the one that was kind of causing the disruption because he was being very he hadn't died in the home, he had died near the home, and that was where he was kind of hiding out. And he liked the people that were there, but he was scaring them. And so we tried to clear it, and then I came home, and sure enough, started having wacky stuff happen in my house.
Hmm.
And I realized that when we were trying to clear him, that the choice of words was to go to your family, go to your family, go to your family. And when I got to my house, I realized that was not the thing to say because the guy didn't have a good relationship with his family. And so that wasn't the thing to get to say to clear the guy. And so I had to do a clearing in my house, and I got rid of him pretty quickly. I mean, he was just coming to, he knew that we recognized him and we understood he was trying to get help to get out of there. But that thing of go to your family, I suggest nobody ever says that when they're doing a clearing, when they're trying to help somebody cross over. Don't tell them to go to your family, tell them to go to the ones that love you.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
Just that little difference. If somebody had a bad relationship with a parent, that's not necessarily who they're going to go to when they see the light.
Right. Right. Especially 'cause you have no way of knowing what kind of relationship they have.
They have. Yeah.
I- And even being a psychic, you
Yeah.
still tell everything. So that's true. Their father, let's say, may scare the heck out of them. And so they run away,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
that. So yeah, it's just, it, I'm sure it happens more often now that people bring these spirits home to their house and then they just don't know what to do with them,
Yeah.
you know. So, and if they
Well,
get,
the city's violent now too, so there's a lot of what I call floaters around too, because there's a lot of unresolved homicides happening in New Orleans right now.
oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean the crime is just incredible. It's a shame. I hate to say it about New Orleans, but it's just I only go there if I have to. Um,
Yeah, yeah. We're in a sad state
and
right
then it's
now.
I go to where I'm going and then I leave. And I hate to say that, but when I hear people are coming down here and they want to come, it's like, look, I mean, I have to be honest with you. And if you got an honest person like on Facebook, people will go back and forth, but mostly people are honest and they'll say, look, there's a real crime problem. And
Yeah,
tell them where not to kind of stay here in this area
yeah,
and off there and all that. And that's been for
yeah,
now. It's like the whole energy of this. Did you, and I'll ask you this last question. After Katrina and during Katrina, afterward, the whole character of the city changed. Did you find that?
yeah. I couldn't even go into the quarter after
Hmm.
Katrina for a good while. Because
Hmm.
every time I would go to the French Quarter, it would feel like somebody was punching me in the stomach. And I was like, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm not coming back here for a while. You know,
Girl,
it was, oh my God.
after Katrina passed and the city was closed for like 2 weeks, but we were on the North Shore, and when the city was open again, like, and you could drive, like everybody wasn't back, but you could go through the city and all. The first thing
Yeah,
my daughter and I wanted to do was go take a ride. You go see, and we knew the French
sure.
been okay. But we drove down there our usual drive, which we wouldn't do now, wouldn't go now. But we drive down Esplanade and all. And it was just, and a lot of people have talked about this over the years. This, my daughter says to me, it looks dark, but all the
Yes.
lights were on, all the electricity, everything was as normal as it could be, and still it was like you couldn't see through something. There was just some darkness, a heaviness that you could really see, not
Yeah.
and it was all over the city, but really in the French Quarter it was just like, this is weird, and both of her and I were like, this is kind of scary. And I mean, all I can say is that there's so many spirits that rely on the tourists, and there's so many spirits who have like the same addictions, like the alcohol and the gambling
Yeah,
or the sex and all, and with the city, and then all of the voodoo practitioners and all the altars, everything was
yeah,
being fed, that's
yes,
only put it together. Like these spirits were for however long not being fed. They don't have anybody to feed off of if they're not,
yeah,
voodoo spirits or whatever. And so, they're gonna it's just this whole shadow over the city. So I can understand how you couldn't go down there. That had to be a
yeah. I really couldn't. Yeah, I
yeah.
really couldn't.
And it took a
It
long
was tough.
get it right. I mean, and to make it better, for it to kind of dissipate a little bit, but I don't think it's really ever gone 100%.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, I'm hopeful that things are going to get better in the city, but people have to watch out where they go for sure.
Well, and that's in any big city, but New Orleans has a way of like lulling you into this, this sort of easy feeling, this easygoing feeling, and suddenly
Yes.
yourself, and you're where you're not supposed to be, unless you know a local who's an honest local who's going to say, no, you
Yeah.
should go over there. And
Yeah.
people have gotten on me bad about that. And I'm like, look, I don't want anybody to get killed. It's
Yeah.
never know. And I guess it's got to be hard for all of you psychics still, to have to deal with that down there. With
Oh, it is. It
yeah.
definitely is.
Well, Cari, we thank you so much for joining us. And one of the things that I heard you say is that you still like to do readings. You love doing readings, and you love helping
I
people.
do.
So if somebody wanted to contact you, you're in New Orleans, but you also do, online or over the phone
Yeah. Yeah.
consultations. So how would somebody get in touch with you if they wanted to do that with you?
Well, they could find me on my website, neworleanspsychic.com, or they could look up Cari Roy and I'll come up. But neworleanspsychic.com is the website, and that's how they could reach us. The telephone number there's a toll-free number that's 877-774-6652. Local number is 504-942-5545.
Great. And can they also purchase your book through your website?
They sure can. They can reach out to us, and it's also available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all of the online retailers.
Okay, that's great. Well, we really enjoyed having you, and we really appreciate you taking time to be with us tonight. And I hope you'll come back when you're next.
Oh, it would be
That'd
my
be
pleasure.
great. Maybe we'll get Misty on, and we'll have like a four-way.
Oh, that would be fun. We would
Yeah,
have
'cause
so much
she was our
fun.
first guest back when we were started to relaunch our podcast. Misty was really
Oh, that,
our first guest, yeah, and so we went on hers on different episodes, and not together, but she came on
yeah.
us. So we'll have to have her back with you, and then we can get more into some of y'all's experiences on investigations and stuff like that. But in the
Oh,
meantime,
that
thank
would be
you so
great.
much for joining us, and I'll be talking to you again soon, hopefully.
Thank you. I look forward to it, ladies, and thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Okay, we'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
you,
Thank you,
Cari.
Kat.
Okay. Bye,
Night.
Bernadine.
Bye,
Good
Boo.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
We'd like to thank our awesome guest, Cari Roy, and we hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. If you have, please give us a like and a share, and please consider subscribing to our channel. We'll be back soon with another great guest. And as always, thanks for listening and good night.